The anti-inflammatory diet is one of the biggest nutrition lies in the fitness industry right now, and if you're following it the way most people do, you're not reducing inflammation, you're just spending more money on groceries. Everywhere you look, someone is pushing the same message. Eat more turmeric, load up on blueberries, drink your green smoothies, and your inflammation problem is solved. Fitness influencers, health blogs, mainstream media, they've built an entire industry around this idea. But here's the problem nobody talks about. Chronic inflammation isn't something you cure by adding superfoods to your diet. That logic is completely backwards. And most people who think they're eating anti-inflammatory are still doing the one thing that's driving their inflammation through the roof, every single day, without even knowing it. The result? Elevated inflammatory markers, impaired recovery, poor body composition progress, and a supplement stack that's doing almost nothing. In this video, we're going to cut through the noise. I'll show you what's actually causing chronic inflammation in your body, why the superfood approach is more marketing than medicine, and what the research says you should be doing instead. No expensive supplements required. Before we talk solutions, we need to separate two things that people constantly confuse: acute inflammation and chronic inflammation. Acute inflammation is your body's normal, healthy immune response. You train hard, you create mechanical stress in muscle tissue. Inflammation activates repair, and you rebuild stronger. That's not a problem. It's the entire mechanism behind muscle growth and adaptation. You want acute inflammation after training. Chronic systemic inflammation is the real enemy. It's low-grade, persistent, running in the background constantly, and the research linking it to serious outcomes is not subtle. Chronic inflammation is associated with obesity, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, impaired athletic recovery, and significantly elevated cancer risk. This is what we need to be addressing, and it's driven in large part by dietary choices made repeatedly over months and years. Here's where most people get it wrong. They're focused on what to add to their diet, when the actual problem is what they're already eating. A landmark 2019 study published in the BMJ followed over 100,000 adults and found that every 10% increase in ultra-processed food consumption was associated with a 12% increase in overall cancer incidence. Separate large-scale studies consistently show higher ultra-processed food intake correlates with elevated inflammatory biomarkers, including C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, and TNF-alpha. These aren't minor signals. These are well-documented inflammatory pathways being activated repeatedly every time you eat. What counts as ultra-processed? Packaged snacks, fast food, soda, breakfast cereals, deli meats, anything engineered for shelf stability or maximum flavor. The common drivers: seed oils disproportionately high in omega-6 fatty acids, refined sugars, artificial additives, emulsifiers, and refined grains. These are the actual culprits behind chronic inflammation, not a deficiency in blueberries. Now let's address the superfood myth directly, because this is where most of the confusion and most of the money is being wasted. Turmeric, blueberries, fatty fish, leafy greens, these are genuinely nutritious foods. Curcumin in turmeric has real anti-inflammatory properties in the research. Anthocyanins in blueberries demonstrate antioxidant activity. Omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish do reduce inflammatory markers. That's well supported in the literature. But the research context matters enormously. Studies showing significant curcumin benefits typically use highly concentrated extracts, not the amount you'd get from adding turmeric to your food. The dose-response relationship means food-level intake often doesn't produce the therapeutic effects the studies document, and the wellness industry conveniently glosses over this detail. More critically, the evidence is clear that adding anti-inflammatory foods on top of a diet still full of ultra-processed food produces minimal net benefit. You cannot out-supplement a bad dietary foundation. The industry profits from this confusion. It's far more profitable to sell you a $50 superfood blend than to tell you to cut soda and seed oils. So, what does a genuinely anti-inflammatory approach look like? Here's what the science consistently supports. First, eliminate ultra-processed foods. This is the single highest leverage intervention available, and it costs nothing extra. Not adding superfoods. Removing inflammatory triggers. That means cutting seed oil-heavy packaged foods, refined sugars, soda, and fast food as a baseline. Dietary quality at the foundational level matters more than any individual add-on you put on top. Second, fix your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. The ideal ratio for reducing inflammation is approximately 4 to 1. The average Western diet sits at 15 to 1 or higher. That imbalance is a direct driver of pro-inflammatory signaling at the cellular level. Add fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, 2 to 3 times per week. A high-quality omega-3 supplement is one of the few additions that genuinely justifies itself when food intake is insufficient. Third, optimize sleep. This one is consistently underestimated in nutrition conversations. Even partial sleep deprivation, 1 or 2 nights of poor sleep, acutely elevates C-reactive protein and other inflammatory markers. 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep is not a lifestyle preference, it's a metabolic requirement, and no superfood compensates for chronic sleep debt. Fourth, manage chronic stress. Sustained psychological stress keeps cortisol chronically elevated, and cortisol directly activates inflammatory signaling pathways over time. This is often left out of nutrition-focused discussions, but the biochemistry is clear. Stress and inflammation are not separate systems. What reduces stress reduces inflammation. Fifth, train consistently. Moderate progressive resistance training is one of the most potent anti-inflammatory interventions documented in the scientific literature. Chronic exercisers consistently show lower baseline inflammatory markers compared to sedentary individuals. Train smart, recover properly, and your baseline inflammation decreases over time. Here's what this actually looks like applied to your daily life. Replace seed oils with olive oil or butter. Cut soda, packaged snacks and fast food. Build your diet around whole foods, vegetables, fruits, lean proteins, legumes, and minimally processed whole grains. Add fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week. Prioritize sleep as a non-negotiable. Address stress with structured recovery. Whether that's training, sleep, or deliberate downtime, that's the foundation. No $40 turmeric supplement. No exotic superfood subscription box. The research points consistently in one direction, and it's far simpler than the wellness industry wants you to believe. If you want to go deeper on building a nutrition strategy that actually produces results, the nutrition playlist has everything you need. Link is on screen, and if this was useful, subscribe. New video drops every Sunday.